Daf Yomi 36b. Continuing, top of the page. V'harav Chizda v'Rabba barav Huno matzlu behu be'urta hahu pliga. The Gemara raises a difficulty. Rav Chizda and Rabba bar Huna would pray in the evening with phylacteries. The Gemara explains that opinion represented in this incident disagrees with the ruling of Rav Nachman. Umi amar Rabba bar Huna hachi amar Huna Sofer chashecha Sofer lo in chashecha lo choyle lo meniach Hovad chashecha choyle tos me'erev Shabbos itmal. The Gemara asks, and did Rabba bar Huna actually say this? That the mitzvah of phylacteries applies at night. But doesn't Rabba bar Huna say if it is uncertain whether it is nightfall or whether it is not nightfall, one neither removes his phylacteries, as is not yet definitely night, as it is not yet definitely night, nor dawns of Abinishio. This indicates that if he is definitely nightfall, that it indicates that if it is definitely nightfall, one removes his phylacteries. The Gemara answers, Rabba bar Huna's ruling there was stated with regard to Shabbat Eve, as one may not don phylacteries on Shabbat when the mitzvah does not apply. My kasavar Laila's man tefillin, Shabbos nami man tefillin, Ikasavar Shabbos loves man tefillin, Laila nami loves man tefillin. The mehechad nimad Shabbos nehosav nimad leilois. The Gemara raised a difficulty with regard to the answer. What does the Rabba bar Huna hold? If he holds it that night as the time when one performs the mitzvah wearing phylacteries, then Shabbat is also a time when one performs the mitzvah wearing phylacteries. If he holds that Shabbat is not a time when one performs the mitzvah wearing phylacteries, then night is also not a time when one performs the mitzvah wearing phylacteries. The reason for this statement is that when the source of Shabbat is excluded from the mitzvah phylacteries, nights are excluded from there as well. The Tanya of Shema Tesachuka Zois. Yomim Yomimo Yomim V'loi Leilois Yomim V'loi Kol Yomim Pral Shabbos Yomim Toivim Divrei Rabbi Yosi Haglili Rabbi Kiva Oimer Lo Yinemro Chukel Zu Ela LePesach Bilvad, as it is taught in the Braiso with regard to the end of the passage of Torah. It discusses both the mitzvahs of the Pesach offering and phylacteries, and you should observe this ordinance in its season from year to year. Miyomim Yomimo, Exodus 13:10. This indicates that these mitzvahs apply during these days, but not during the night. Furthermore, the letter Mem, meaning from, in the term from year, Miyamim, teaches these mitzvahs apply on some days, but not on all days. This excludes Shabbat and festivals, on which phylacteries are not worn. This is the statement of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Akiva says. This verse mentioning an ordinance is stated only with regard to the Paschal offering, and it is not referring to phylacteries at all. Evidently, Rabbi Yossi Haglili, who says that at night one is exempt from the obligation from donning phylacteries, says that on Shabbat one is exempt as well. Nafgalei me'or nafgalei Rabbi Kiva, the Tanya Rabbi Kiva oimer. Yochel nechod und vielen Shabbos ist ihrem Toivim. Tamal loim wohel ois al yod necho. Et tufos ben necho mish tzrichen ois. Yod Shabbos yom Toivim. Shehein gufen ois. The Gemara answers, Rabba bar Huna derives the exemption from the obligation to don phylacteries on Shabbat from a different source. The source from where Rabbi Akiva derives them, as it is on it. Right, Rabbi Akiva says one might have thought that a person should don phylacteries on Shabbat and festivals. To counter this, the verse states, and it shall be for a sign for you on your arm and for a remembrance between your eyes, so that God's law shall be in your mouth. For with a strong arm God brought you out of Egypt. Exodus 13:9. This teaches that the obligation to don phylacteries applies when the Jewish people require a sign to assert their status as God's nation, meaning during the week. This serves to exclude Shabbatot and festivals, as they themselves are signs of the Jewish people's status as God's nation and a remembrance of the Exodus from Egypt. Consequently, no further sign is required on these days. Yochanan Ma'oyu Balav, Lema Yochanan, Lema Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi Ilah, Kom Yiflegi. Dom Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi Ilah, Kol Mokom Shnei Shomer, Pen V'al Einoi Ela Lo Yisase. Rabbi Lazar says, anyone who dons phylacteries after sunset finds a positive mitzvah. And Rabbi Yochanan says he violates a prohibition. The Gemara suggests, let us say, that the sages disagree with regard to the principle that Rabbi Avin says, that Rabbi Ilah says, as Rabbi Avin says, Rabbi Ilah says, any place where it is stated in the Torah, any of the terms, observe, or lest, or do not, this means nothing other than a prohibition. As these are negative terms, Demar Isle Rabbi Ovin, Umar Leslie Rabbi Ovin. The Gemara explains the suggestion as it says Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that this ruling is according to the opinion of Rabbi Ovin, and therefore the verse, and you shall observe this ordinance in the season from year to year, from which the exclusion of night is derived, is a prohibition in it as it employs the term observe. And that sage Rabbi Elazar is of the opinion that the ruling is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Avin, and therefore the term "and you shall observe" is a positive mitzvah. Lo yichuli dalma lisluhu Rabbi Avin amar Rabbi Ilah v'hacha b'hokam yifligi mal stom yishomer lelav yishomer de'asei asei mal sovar yishomer de'asei namilav. The Gemara counters, no, everyone is of the opinion that the ruling is in accordance with the opinion that Rabbi Avin says, that Rabbi Ilah says, that, and here they disagree with regard to this. One sage, Rabbi Elazar, holds that the term observe written in regard to a prohibition has the status of a prohibition, whereas the status of the term observe written in regard to a positive mitzvah has the status of a positive mitzvah, as the Torah is issuing a warning to take a special care in the observance of the mitzvah. Accordingly, the command with regard to the positive mitzvah phylacteries is a positive mitzvah. And when one sage, Rabbi Yochanan, holds that the term observe written with regard to positive mitzvah is also a prohibition. Rabbi Lozo, Im Shaman Muto, Mabina Hayasiv Nekami Dravashi, V'choshach, V'niach Tzvilim Amarale, Shaman Kumboilahu Mal, V'amali In. V'chazite ledaite tilav lishomen hu boi kasava halocha ve'in moirin kain. Halocha ve'in moirin kain. Rabbi Lazar says that although it is prohibited to don phylacteries at night, if one does so in order to safeguard them from the theft and the like, it is permitted. And Ravina said, I was sitting before Vashi and it grew dark and he donned phylacteries. And I said to him, does the master need to safeguard them? And he said to me, yes. But I saw that his intention in donning them was not that he needed to safeguard them. Rather, Rashi holds, this is the halacha, that night is an appropriate time for phylacteries, but a public ruling is not issued to that effect. Halacha ve'in moirin kein. Omar Rabbi Baruno, Chai Odom Nishamish Betfilim Bechol Shor, Kal V'choyim L'Mitzitz U'Matzitz She'in Boi. Elas kol achas am Torah ve'hayon mitzchoy tamid shelo yitasich or in brackets yasich daita mimenu tefillin sheyesh bo naskois harbe alachas kam bekamo. Rabbi Baruch says a person is obligated to touch his phylacteries regularly for the entire time that he is wearing them. This is derived as a kavachomer inference from the front plate of the high priest as follows. And if, with regard to the front plate, which only has one mention of God's name, the Torah states, and it should be always upon his forehead. Exodus 28:38, which means that the high priest must always be aware that the front plate is placed on his head, and that he should not be distracted from it. When, with regard to phylacteries, we have numerous mentions of God's name, all the more so one must always be aware of them. Tanu Rabbanon Yodcha Zu Smoil Ato Oimer Smoil Oino Yelemin Tam Oimer Av Yodias Do Eretz Vimini Tipcho Shomayim Oimer Yodod Yosei Tishnachena Vimina Lehamlos Amelim Oimer למה תושיב ידך וימינך מכך כעלה. Tanur Rabbanan, the sages taught with regard to a verse, and it shall be a sign for you on your arm, Yedecha. Exodus 13 verse 9, that this is referring to the left arm. Do you say it means the left arm, or is it only the right arm? The verse states, even my hand, Yadi, has laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand has spread out the heavens. Isaiah 48:13. And another verse states, her hand, Yada, she put to the 10th pin, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. Judges 5:26. And another verse states, why do you withdraw your hand? Even your right hand, draw it out of your bosom and consume them. Psalm 74:11. All these verses employ the term yad with the term to left hand, and use the term yamin, literally right, without the term yad, to indicate right hand. Okay.